everyone, welcome to the Zoom Room. I'm Dean, the creator of the Zoom Room, and I've created the Zoom Room to help Zoom Effects users learn to use their Zoom effects to their fullest potential. In this particular video, we're going to be covering stuff to do with the G3X, and of course, as with many Zoom processors here, this covers a wide range of the Zoom effect catalog. You'll be able to use the information in this video for not only the G3X, but a bunch of the other processors in the Zoom line, because of course all the processors are designed very similarly, and if you have a processor that basically has a parametric EQ in it, then this will apply to any of the Zoom processors in this line. So I'm just going to show you some stuff related to actually getting the most out of some of these processors, as far as if you're using them for rock or metal sounds in this video. And we're going to go over a little trick here that's used by some recording engineers currently to actually sculpt some metal sounds and some rock sounds and make them sound much better. As we know, Zoom Effects, if you're a user out there that owns Zoom Effects, I own a bunch of them. They're excellent effects processors. I've been using them exclusively now for many years, and I've owned everything you can possibly think of. I've had Axe Effects units. I've had almost every pod unit that Line 6 makes. Either in the rack version, the floor version, the bean version, whatever. I've owned so many effects processors over the past 15 years. I have a great wealth of experience and knowledge with these units, and as of recently I chose to start just using Zoom effects processors exclusively in recording applications and in live applications. And my goal here is to show you guys how to use your processors much better and get the most out of them that you possibly can. So just quickly here, I'm going to show you what's basically in the effect chain here on this particular unit. All I'm running for the dirty sounds here right now is a diesel drive amp, and before this I've got a graphic EQ just ahead of that, and a noise gate. So this is basically all I had in the effect chain in the sound I was playing with just before, which is actually this sound here. So that just lets you hear that sound. And here's the trick we're going to be actually looking at today. So if you want to improve sound, because effects processors a lot of the time, no matter how well they're designed, have a tendency at times to sound somewhat artificial. Of course, the designers of Zoom effects do their best to make these effects emulate the amplifiers that they're emulating as closely as possible, but there's always an inherent difference between a real tube amplifier and a unit like a Zoom unit. There's not a lot of difference, but if you have a very trained ear and you know something about sound, you'll be able to hear the differences when you're using these units. And the goal here is to make these units sound even better, so you really can't tell the difference. Now that's really hard to do a lot of the time, but it is possible to improve on these sounds, and I'm going to show you some things and some tricks to do this exact thing here and get the most out of your units. So just going with this sound we have here right now, we're going to go into this second patch here, which is basically empty, and we're going to scroll up through the effects, and we're going to find the parametric equalizer, which is right there. We're going to go into page 1 of the parametric equalizer, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check this Q frequency right here. Right now it's set all the way at 16 kilohertz, which is where we want it to be. It's normally somewhere around like the middle around here, normally like this, but just make sure that this Q setting is all the way up to 16 kilohertz. Then you're going to want to take the gain setting, which is now currently on -12. Normally it would be up here at the 0 setting like this. You're going to take this gain setting and make sure that it's all the way down to -12. And then you're going to take this frequency setting here, and you're going to make this sure that this is somewhere around 60 hertz to 80 hertz to start out. Then we're going to go to page 2 here, and we're going to repeat this. And as you can see, we have some settings here. So again, the Q setting is all the way up to 16 kilohertz, and I have the gain here on this setting killed all the way down to -12. We're going to take the frequency setting here, and we're going to leave this up around 6.5 5 kilohertz, or in this case it's on 6.3 kilohertz right here. Now, what this is doing effectively when you're actually setting these settings in this mode, by the way, the level is on 102 here, is you're sculpting the frequencies out of the dirty part of the guitar that are not useful. And this is to say that when you're going way down here in the bottom end around 100K, guitars don't usually produce natural bottom end much below 100K. So when you're in the low setting here, you're actually taking these frequencies below 100K and you're pulling them all the way down to 0 pretty much. So you're just sculpting off all the low end rumble, which is just creating low end noise. By comparison here, when you go into the second part here with the higher setting, you're actually just taking everything in the opposite end of the spectrum, let's say between 4 kilohertz and 16 kilohertz here. I think the range of the Zoom processor is actually 20 kilohertz altogether, but let's say up to 16K here, and you're pulling out all this white noise sizzle that happens. Because when you're using very heavily gained guitar sounds, that gain in processors behaves differently than it does in tube amps. It usually creates a lot of high-end sizzly white noise, and that is noise that is not necessary to be in the guitar sound. So what we're effectively doing here is we're taking all that sound and we're just eliminating the unnecessary artifacts from 100 hertz downwards, and from, let's say, 4 to 6 kilohertz upwards, we're taking it out and pulling it all out in this mix here. And this is actually the result that you get. And you'll be able to notice this a little bit more in the high-end frequencies than you will in the bottom. But we're going to just show you the bottom frequencies here first. So as you go chugging along here, and you crank the frequency up here a little bit, you'll notice that the middles start to become more focused and you don't get as much rumble. If I turn the frequencies off here altogether, it's a little bit hard to hear on my camera in this way, so you guys will have to experiment with this, and you'll see the differences much better when you're doing it in person and you're adjusting here. But as you come up here from 20 hertz, it's going to start to pull out that rumble that you really don't need in the guitar. And you'll still get bottom end, but you won't get the rumble that goes along with it. By comparison here, if you go up to the higher frequencies, right around here, if we open the frequency up all the way to 20 kilohertz and we come back down, you'll notice that it starts to pull out all of that white noise sizzle in the top. So we're just going to go, I'm just going to chug a note here, or a chord, and you're going to see what happens as we go here. So as we come down, you won't notice much till you get to about 6 kilohertz. So when we get here, this is when you'll start to notice here. See? From 10 kilohertz backwards, that white noise starts coming out, and you're left with just the pure sound of the driven amp in between here. Now, one of the advantages this actually gives you is that if you're playing with quite a bit of gain or distortion on the guitar here, I actually have the gain on the diesel amp set at 14 here, and you're pulling out those unnecessarily high-end frequencies here that are just adding white noise sizzle to the sound. You can see as I've just gone from 4K to 5K, it's adding a lot of high-end sizzle, and that's frequencies we really don't need there. So you're going to have to experiment to see what is a happy sound for your guitar settings on here, because it's going to be different for every guitar and it's going to be different for every player. So you're going to have to play around with this and find where that happy frequency actually is, and you'll be able to set it to where it feels good and comfortable for you, to your ears, and where it's clipping out all of that white noise in the top end. But as we go down here, it starts pulling out all of that top end sizzle. One of the advantages of doing this is actually when you do this, one of the things you can do is if you turn up the gain even more on your guitar, it doesn't add much sizzle. In fact, at times, depending on how you have this set, you may be able to actually double the amount of gain on your guitar if you wish to do so. As we know, for rock sounds and especially for metal sounds, when you get the gain up a little higher on the guitar, it actually auto-compresses the guitar a little bit better. You get a little bit more of a stable sound because you're getting natural compression happening here along with the gain, and you might get an actual better sound. So this is a great studio trick that lots of modern rock and metal engineers are using right now to sculpt out the unnecessary high end and the unnecessary low end to get a more focused sound, especially in applications where you're using a metal sound, and in applications where you're wanting to send this sound not to an amplifier necessarily, but directly to the board or directly to a recording interface. It will actually take out all those low-end rumble artifacts and all that high-end sizzle, and you'll be able to get a much more focused sound with a little more gain in it if you need that little bit more gain. If you don't, by the same comparison, you can back off that gain and still get a pretty cool sound. And you'll just get a much clearer, much more focused sound out of your guitar without any of the unnatural artifacts that would be affecting it if you weren't pulling out all of that top-end sizzle and all of that unnecessary bottom-end rumble. So hopefully this gives you guys a little tip on how to improve hard edge sounds like metal sounds and hard rock guitar sounds. It will work right across the board for anything in the dirty guitar sound range here, because you're basically just taking out the unnecessary sounds that are creating extra noise in your sound, and in turn it will improve your guitar sound. So this has been basically a little trick here for the G3X and all of the Zoom processors that have the same engine in them as the G3X to actually improve your sound here. Hopefully this helps you guys out there a little bit. Like I said, plug in, copy these settings, experiment with this, see what happens with your units. I think that you'll see some markable improvement in your sounds live and direct to recording, and just even if you're using a clean amplifier with your zoom into the amplifier, it's going to improve the dynamics of your sound at least a reasonable amount that you're going to notice a difference. So I'm going to say to you guys, stay tuned for the next videos coming up. I'm going to have a tutorial as well on the G1ON and how to use the same settings within that effect processor. And then we're going to be doing some other videos as well coming up to give you guys some other great tips on how to use your units and get the most out of your Zoom units. Stay tuned. I'm going to have some content coming up on the channel, some new videos as well as these ones very soon. Have a great day, and I'll catch you really soon.